A Madman's Diary by Lu Xun. Two brothers whose names I need not mention here were both good friends of mine in high school, but after a separation of many years we gradually lost touch. Some time ago I happened to hear that one of them was seriously ill, and since I was going back to my old home I broke my journey to call on them. I saw only one, however, who told me that the invalid was his younger brother. "I appreciate you coming such a long way to see us," he said, "but my brother recovered some time ago and has gone elsewhere to take up an official post." Then, laughing, he produced 2 volumes of his brother's diary, saying that from these the nature of his past illness could be seen, and that there was no harm in showing them to an old friend. I took the diary away, read it through, and found that he had suffered from a form of persecution complex. The writing was most confused and incoherent, and he had made many wild statements. Moreover, he had omitted to give any dates, so that only by the color of the ink and the differences in the writing could one tell that it was not written at one time. Certain sections, however, were not altogether disconnected, and I have copied out a part to serve as a subject for medical research. I have not altered a single illogicality in the diary, and have changed only the names, even though the people referred to are all country folk, unknown to the world, and of no consequence. As for the title, it was chosen by the diarist himself after his recovery, and I did not change it. 1. Tonight the moon is very bright. I have not seen it for over 30 years, so today when I saw it I felt in unusually high spirits. I began to realize that during the past 30-odd years I have been in the dark, but now I must be extremely careful. Otherwise, why should that dog at the chow house have looked at me twice? I have reason for my fear. 2. Tonight there is no moon at all. I know this bodes ill. This morning when I went out cautiously, Mr. Chow had a strange look in his eyes, as if he were afraid of me, as if he wanted to murder me. There were 7 or 8 others who discussed me in a whisper, and they were afraid of my seeing them. All of the people I passed were like that. The fiercest among them grinned at me, whereupon I shivered from head to foot, knowing that their preparations were complete. I was not afraid, however, but continued on my way. A group of children in front were also discussing me, and the look in their eyes were just like Mr. Chow's, while their faces, too, were ghastly pale. I wondered what grudge these children could have against me to make them behave like this. I could not help calling out, "Tell me!" But then they ran away. I wonder what grudge Mr. Chow can have against me, what grudge the people on the road can have against me. I can think of nothing except that 20 years ago I trod on Mr. Ku Chu's account sheets from many years past, and Mr. Ku was very displeased. Although Mr. Chow does not know him, he must have heard talk of this and decided to avenge him. So he is conspiring against me with the people on the road. But then, what of the children? At that time they were not yet born. So why should they eye me so strangely today, as if they were afraid of me, as if they wanted to murder me? This really frightens me. It is so bewildering and upsetting. I know. They must have learned it from their parents. 3. I can't sleep at night. Everything requires careful consideration if one is to understand it. Those people, some of whom had been pilloried by the magistrate, slapped in the face by the local gentry, had their wives taken away by bailiffs, or their parents driven to suicide by creditors, never looked as frightened and as fierce as they did yesterday. The most extraordinary thing was that woman on the street yesterday who spanked her son and said, "Little devil, I'd like to bite several mouthfuls out of you to work off my feelings." Yet at the time she looked at me. I gave a start, unable to control myself. Then all those green-faced, long-toothed people began to laugh derisively. Old Chen hurried forward and dragged me home. He dragged me home. The folks at home all pretended to know me. They had the same look in their eyes as all the others. And when I went into the study, they locked the door outside as if cooping up a chicken or a duck. The incident left me even more bewildered. A few days ago, a tenant of ours from Wolf Club Village came to report the failure of the crops, and told my elder brother that a notorious character in their village had been beaten to death, and then some people had taken out his heart and liver, fried them in oil, and eaten them, as if a means of increasing their courage. When I interrupted, the tenant and my brother both stared at me. Only today have I realized that they had exactly the same look in their eyes as the people outside. Just to think of it sets me shivering from the crown of my head to the soles of my feet. They eat human beings, so they may eat me. I see that woman bite several mouthfuls out of you. The laughter of those green-faced, long-toothed people and the tenant's story the other day are obviously secret signs. I realize all the poison in their speech, all the daggers in their laughter. Their teeth are white and glistening. They are man-eaters. It seems to me, although I am not a bad man, ever since I trod on Mr. Ku's accounts it had been touch and go. They seem to have secrets which I cannot guess, and once they are angry, they can call anyone a bad character. I remember when my elder brother taught me to write compositions. No matter how good a man was, if I produced arguments to the contrary, he would mark the passage to show his approval. While, if I excused evildoers, he would say, "Good for you, that shows originality." How can I possibly guess their secret thoughts, especially when they are ready to eat people? Everything requires careful consideration if one is to understand it. In ancient times, as I recollect, people often ate human beings, but I am rather hazy about it. I tried to look this up, but my history has no chronology, and scrawled all over pages are the words, "virtue and morality." Since I could not sleep anyway, I read intently half the night, until I began to see words between the lines, the whole book filled with the two words, "eat people." All these words written in the book, all the words spoken by our tenant, gazed at me strangely with an enigmatic smile. I too am a man, and they want to eat me. 4. In the morning I sat quietly for some time. Old Chen brought lunch in. 1 bowl of vegetables, 1 bowl of steamed fish. The eyes of the fish were white and hard, and its mouth was open, just like those people who want to eat human beings. After a few mouthfuls I could not tell whether the slippery morsels were fish or human flesh, so I brought it all up. I said, "Old Chen, tell my brother that I feel quite suffocated and want to have a stroll in the garden." Old Chen said nothing but went out, and presently he came back and opened the gate. I did not move, but watched to see how they would treat me, feeling certain that they would not let me go. Sure enough, my elder brother came slowly out, leading an old man. There was a murderous gleam in his eyes, and fearing that I would see it, he lowered his head, stealing glances at me from the side of his spectacles. "You seem to be very well today," said my brother. "Yes, I am." "I have invited Mr. Ho here today," said my brother, "to examine you." "All right," said I. Actually, I knew quite well that this old man was the executioner in disguise. He simply used the pretext of feeling my pulse to see how fat I was, for by so doing he would receive a share of my flesh. Still, I was not afraid. Although I do not eat men, my courage is greater than theirs. I held out my 2 fists to see what he would do. The old man sat down, closed his eyes, fumbled for some time, and remained still for some time. And then he opened his shifty eyes and said, "Don't let your imagination run away with you. Rest quietly for a few days, and you will be all right." "Don't let your imagination run away with you? Rest quietly for a few days? When I have grown fat, naturally they will have more to eat. But what good will it do me? Or how can it be all right? All these people wanting to eat human flesh, and at the same time stealthily trying to keep up appearances, not daring to act properly, really made me nearly die of laughing. I could not help roaring with laughter. I was so amused. I knew that in this laughter were courage and integrity. Both the old man and my brother turned pale, awed by my courage and integrity. But just because I am brave, they are the more eager to eat me, in order to acquire some of my courage. The old man went out of the gate, but before he had gone far, he said to my brother in a low voice, "To be eaten at once." And my brother nodded. "So you are in it too." This stupendous discovery, although it came as a shock, is yet no more than I had expected. The accomplice in eating me is my elder brother. The eater of flesh is my elder brother. I myself will be eaten by others, but none the less I am the younger brother of an eater of human flesh. 5. These few days I have been thinking again. Suppose that old man were not an executioner in disguise, but a real doctor. He would be, none the less, an eater of human flesh. In that book of herbs, written by his predecessor, Li Shi-chen, it is clearly stated that men's flesh can be boiled and eaten. So can he still say that he does not eat men? As for my elder brother, I have also good reason to suspect him. When he was teaching me, he said with his own lips, "People exchange their sons to eat." And once in discussing a bad man, he said that not only did he deserve to be killed, he should have his flesh eaten and his hide slept in. I was still young then, but my heart beat faster for some time. He was not at all surprised by the story that our tenant from Wolf Club Village told us the other day about eating a man's heart and liver, but kept nodding his head. He is evidently just as cruel as before. Since it is possible to exchange sons to eat, then anything can be exchanged. Anything can be eaten. In the past, I simply listened to his explanations and let it go at that. Now I know that when he explained it to me, not only was there human fat in the corner of his lips, but his whole heart was set on eating men. 6. Pitch dark. I don't know whether it is day or night. The Chow family dog has started barking again. The fierceness of a lion, the timidity of a rabbit, the craftiness of a fox. 7. I know their way. They are not willing to kill anyone outright, nor do they dare, for fear of the consequences. Instead, they have banded together and set traps everywhere, to force me to kill myself. The behavior of the men and women in the streets a few days ago, and my elder brother's attitude these last few days, make it quite obvious. What they like best is for a man to take off his belt and hang himself from a beam, for then they can enjoy their heart's desire without being blamed for murder. Naturally, that sets them roaring with delighted laughter. On the other hand, if a man is frightened or worried to death, although that makes him rather thin, they still nod in approval. They only eat dead flesh. I remember reading somewhere of a hideous beast with an ugly look in its eye, called hyena, which often eats dead flesh. Even the largest bones it grinds into fragments and swallows. The mere thought of this is enough to terrify one. Hyenas are related to wolves, and wolves belong to the canine species. The other day, the dog in the Chow house looked at me several times. Obviously, it is in the plot too, and has become their accomplice. The old man's eyes were cast down, but that did not deceive me. The most deplorable is my eldest brother. He is also a man, so why is he not afraid? Why is he plotting with others to eat me? Is it that when one is used to it, he no longer thinks it is a crime? Or is it that he has hardened his heart to do something he knows is wrong? In cursing man-eaters, I shall start with my brother, and in dissuading man-eaters, I shall start with him too. 8. Actually, such arguments should have convinced them long ago. Suddenly someone came in. He was only about 20 years old, and I did not see his features very clearly. His face was wreathed in smiles. But when he nodded to me, his smile did not seem genuine. I asked him, "Is it right to eat human beings?" Still smiling, he replied, "When there is no famine, how can one eat human beings?" I realized at once he was one of them. But still, I summoned up courage to repeat my question. "Is it right?" "What makes you ask such a thing? You really are fond of a joke. It is very fine today." "It is fine, and the moon is very bright. But I want to ask you, is it right?" He looked disconcerted and muttered, "No." "No? Then why do they still do it?" "What are you talking about?" "What am I talking about? They are eating men now in Wolf Club Village. And you can see it written all over the books, in fresh red ink." His expression changed, and he grew ghastly pale. "It may be so," he said, staring at me. "It has always been like that." "Is it right because it has always been like that?" "I refuse to discuss these things with you. Anyway, you shouldn't talk about it. Whoever talks about it is in the wrong." I leaped up and opened my eyes wide. But the man had vanished. I was soaked with perspiration. He was much younger than my elder brother, but even so he was in it. He must have been taught by his parents, and I am afraid he has already taught his son. That is why even the children look at me so fiercely. 9. Wanting to eat men. At the same time, afraid of being eaten themselves. They all look at each other with the deepest suspicion. How comfortable life would be for them if they could rid themselves of such obsessions and go to work, walk, eat, and sleep at ease. They have only this one step to take. Yet fathers and sons, husbands and wives, brothers, friends, teachers and students, sworn enemies, and even strangers, all have joined in this conspiracy, discouraging and preventing each other from taking this step. 10. Early this morning I went to look for my elder brother. He was standing outside the hall door looking at the sky. When I walked up behind him, stood between him and the door, and with the exceptional poise and politeness said to him, "Brother, I have something to say to you." "Well, what is it?" he asked, quickly turning towards me and nodding. "It is very little, but I find it difficult to say. Brother, probably all primitive people ate a little human flesh to begin with. Later, because their outlook changed, some of them stopped, and because they tried to be good, they changed into men, changed into real men. But some are still eating, just like reptiles. Some have changed into fish, birds, monkeys, and finally men. But some do not try to be good, and remain reptiles still. When those who eat men compare themselves with those who do not, how ashamed they must be! Probably much more ashamed than the reptiles are before monkeys. In ancient times, Yi Ya boiled his son for Che and Cho to eat. That is the old story. But actually, since the creation of heaven and earth by Pan Ku, men have been eating each other. From the time of Yi Ya's son to the time of Su Si Lin, and from the time of Su Si Lin down to the man caught in Wolf Club Village. Last year they executed a criminal in this city, and a consumptive soaked a piece of bread in his blood and sucked it. They want to eat me. And of course you can do nothing about it single-handed. But why should you join them? As man-eaters they are capable of anything. If they eat me, they will eat you as well. Members of the same group can still eat each other. But if you just change your ways immediately, then everyone will have peace. Although this has been going on since time immemorial, today we could make a special effort to be good, and say this is not to be done. I'm sure you can say so, brother. The other day when the tenant wanted the rent reduced, you said it couldn't be done. At first he only smiled cynically. Then a murderous gleam came into his eyes, and when I spoke of their secret, his face turned pale. Outside the gate stood a group of people, including Mr. Chow and his dog, all craning their necks to peer in. I could not see all their faces, for they seemed to be masked in cloths. Some of them looked pale and ghastly still, concealing their laughter. I knew they were one band, all eaters of human flesh, but I also knew that they did not all think alike by any means. Some of them thought that since it had always been so, men should be eaten. Some of them knew that they should not eat men, but still wanted to, and they were afraid people might discover their secret. Thus, when they heard me, they became angry, but they still smiled their cynical, tight-lipped smile. Suddenly my brother looked furious and shouted in a loud voice, "Get out of here, all of you! What is the point of looking at a madman?" And then I realized part of their cunning. They would never be willing to change their stand, and their plans were all laid. They had stigmatized me as a madman. In future, when I was eaten, not only would there be no trouble, but people would probably be grateful to them. When our tenant spoke of the villagers eating a bad character, it was exactly the same device. This was their old trick. Old Chen came in too, in a great temper, but they could not stop my mouth. I had to speak to those people. "You should change from the bottom of your hearts," I said. "You must know that in the future there will be no place for man-eaters in the world. If you don't change, you may all be eaten by each other. Although so many are born, they will be wiped out by the real men, just like wolves killed by hunters, just like reptiles." Old Chen drove everybody out. My brother had disappeared. Old Chen advised me to go back to my room. The room was pitch dark. The beams and rafters shook above my head, and after shaking for some time, they grew larger. They piled on top of me. The weight was great. I could not move. They meant that I should die. I knew that the weight was false, but I struggled out, covered in perspiration. But I had to say, "You shall change at once. Change from the bottom of your hearts. You must know that in the future there will be no place for man-eaters in the world." 11. The sun does not shine. The door is not open. Every day 2 meals. I took up my chopsticks, then thought of my elder brother. I know now how my little sister died. It was all through him. My sister was only 5 at the time. I can still remember how lovable and pathetic she looked. Mother cried and cried. But he begged her not to cry, probably because he had eaten her himself, and so her crying made him feel ashamed, if he had any sense of shame. My sister was eaten by my brother, but I don't know whether Mother realized it or not. I think Mother must have known, but when she cried and did not say so outright, probably because she thought it proper too. I remember when I was 4 or 5 years old, sitting in the cool of the hall, my brother told me that if a man's parents were ill, he should cut off a piece of his flesh and boil it for them if he wanted to be considered a good son. And Mother did not contradict him. If one piece should be eaten, obviously so could the whole. And yet just to think of the mourning then still makes my heart bleed. That is the extraordinary thing about it. 12. I can't bear to think of it. I have only just realized that I have been living all these years in a place where for 4,000 years they have been eating human flesh. My brother had just taken over the charge of the house when our sister died, and he may well have used her flesh in our rice and dishes, making us eat it unwittingly. Is it possible that I ate several pieces of my sister's flesh unwittingly, and now it is my turn? How can a man like himself, after 4,000 years of man-carrying history, even if I knew nothing about it at first, ever hope to face real men? 13. Perhaps there are still children who have not eaten men. Save the children. The Flight to the Moon by Lu Xun. 1. It is a fact that intelligent beasts can divine the wishes of men. As soon as their gate came in sight, the horse slowed down, and hanging its head at the same moment as its rider, let it jog with each step like a pestle pounding rice. The great house was overhung with evening mist, while thick black smoke rose from the neighbors' chimneys. It was time for supper. At the sound of hooves, retainers had come out and were standing erect with their arms at their sides before the entrance. As Li dismounted listlessly beside the rubbish heap, they stepped forward to receive him of his reins and whip. At the moment of crossing the threshold, he looked down at the quiverful of brand-new arrows at his waist, and the 3 crows and 1 shattered sparrow in his bag, and his heart sank within him. But he strode in, putting a bold face on things, the arrows rattling in his quiver. Reaching the inner courtyard, he saw Chang Go looking out from the round window. He knew her sharp eyes must have seen the crows, and in dismay he came to a sudden stop. But he had to go on in. Serving maids came out to greet him, unfastened his bow and quiver, and took his game bag. He noticed that their smiles were rather forced. After wiping his face and hands, he entered the inner apartment, calling, "Madam!" Chang Go had been watching the sunset from the round window. She turned slowly and threw him an indifferent glance without returning his greeting, for over a year at least. But as usual he went on in and sat down on the old worn leopard skin over the wooden couch opposite. Scratching his head, he muttered, "I was out of luck again today. Nothing but crows." "Pah!" Raising her willowy eyebrows, Chang Go sprang up and swept from the room, grumbling as she went. "Noodles with crow sauce again! I'd like to know who else eats nothing but noodles with crow sauce from one year to the next. How ill-fated I was to marry you and eat noodles with crow sauce the whole year round." "Madam!" Yi leaped to his feet and followed her. "It wasn't so bad today," he continued softly. "I shot a sparrow, too, which can be dressed for you. Lu Xun," he called to the maid, "bring that sparrow to show your mistress." The game had been taken to the kitchen, but Lu Xun ran to fetch the sparrow and held it out in both hands to Chang Go. "That?" With a disdainful glance she reached slowly out to touch it. "How disgusting!" she said crossly. "You've smashed it to pieces. Where's the meat?" "I know," admitted Yi, discomfited. "My bow is too powerful. My arrowheads are too large." "Can't you use smaller arrows?" "I haven't any. When I shot the giant boar and the huge python—" "Is this a giant boar or a huge python?" She turned to Lu Xun and ordered, "Use it for soup." Then she went back to her room. Left alone at a loss, Yi sat down with his back to the wall to listen to the crackling of firewood in the kitchen. He remembered the bulk of the giant boar which had loomed like a hillock in the distance. If he hadn't shot it then, but left it till now, it would have kept them in meat for half a year, and spared them the daily worry about food. And the huge python, what soups it could have made! Nu Yi lit the lamp. The vermilion bow and arrows, the black bow and arrows, the crossbow, the sword and the dagger glimmered on the opposite wall in its faint rays. One after another, Yi lowered his head and sighed. Nu Sin brought supper in and set it on the table in the middle. 5 large bowls of noodle on the left, 2 large bowls of noodle and 1 soup on the right. In the center, 1 large bowl of crow sauce. While eating, Yi had to admit that this was not an appetizing meal. He stole a glance at Chang Go. Without so much as looking at the crow sauce, she had steeped her noodles in the soup, and she set down her bowl half finished. Her face struck him as paler and thinner than before. Suppose she were to fall ill? By the second watch, in a slightly better mood, she sat without a word on the edge of the bed to drink some water. Yi sat on the wooden couch next to her, stroking the old leopard skin which was losing its fur. "Ah," he said in a conciliatory tone, "I bagged this solid leopard on the western hill before we were married. It was a beauty, one glossy mass of gold." That reminded him of how they lived in the old days. Of bears they ate nothing but the paws, of camels nothing but the hump, giving all the rest to the serving maids and retainers. When the big game was finished, they ate wild boars, rabbits, and pheasants. He was such a fine archer, he could shoot as much as he pleased. A sigh escaped him. "The fact is, I'm too good a shot," he said. "That's why the whole place is cleaned out. Who could have guessed we'd be left with nothing but crows?" Chang Go gave the ghost of a smile. "Today I was luckier than usual." Yi's spirits were rising. "At least I caught a sparrow. I had to go an extra 30 li to find it." "Can't you go a little further still?" "Yes, madam, that's what I mean to do. I'll get up early tomorrow morning, and if you wake first, call me. I mean to go 50 li further to see if I can find some roebucks or rabbits. It won't be easy, though. Remember all the game there was when I shot the giant boar and the huge python? Black bears used to pass in front of your mother's door, and she asked me several times to shoot them." "Really?" It seemed to have slipped Chang Go's memory. Who could have foreseen they would all disappear like this? "Come to think of it, I don't know how we're going to manage. I'm all right. I've only to eat the elixir the priest gave me. I can fly up to heaven. But first I must think of you. That's why I've decided to go a little further tomorrow." Chang Go finished the water. She lay down slowly and closed her eyes. The lamp, burning low, lit up her fading makeup. Much of her powder had rubbed off. There were dark circles beneath her eyes, and one of her eyebrows were blacker than the other. Yet her mouth was as red as fire, and though she wasn't smiling, you could see faint dimples on her cheeks. "Ah, no! How can I feed a woman like this on nothing but noodles and crow sauce?" Overcome with shame, Yi flushed up to his ears. 2. Night passed, a new day dawned. In a flash Yi opened his eyes. A sunbeam aslant the western wall told him it could not be early. He looked at Chang Go, who was lying stretched out fast asleep. Without a sound he threw on his clothes, slipped down from his leopard-skin couch, and tiptoed into the hall. As he washed his face, he told Nu King to order Wang Sheng to saddle his horse. Having so much to do, he had long since given up breakfast. Nu Yi put 5 baked cakes, 5 stalks of leek, and a package of paprika in his game bag, fastening this firmly to his waist with his bow and arrows. He tightened his belt and strode lightly out of the hall, telling Nu King, whom he met, "I mean to go farther today to look for game. I may be a little late getting back. When your mistress has had her breakfast and is in good spirits, give her my apologies and ask her to wait for me for supper. Don't forget my apologies." He walked swiftly out, swung into the saddle, and flashed past the retainers ranged on either side. Very soon he was out of the village. In front were the Qiaoliang fields through which he passed every day. These he ignored, having learned long ago that there was nothing there. With 2 cracks of his whip he galloped forward, covering 60 li without a pause. In front was a dense forest, and since his horse was winded and in a lather, it naturally slowed down. Another 10 li, and they were in the forest. But Li could see nothing but wasps, butterflies, ants, and locusts. Not a trace of birds or beasts. The first sight of this unexplored territory had raised hopes of catching at least a couple of foxes or rabbits, but now he knew that had been an idle dream. He made his way out and saw another stretch of green kaoliang fields ahead, with 1 or 2 mud cottages in the distance. The breeze was balmy, the sun warm. Neither crow nor sparrows could be heard. "Confound it!" he bellowed to relieve his feelings. A dozen paces further on, however, and his heart leaped with joy. On the flat ground outside a mud hut in the distance there was actually a fowl. Stopping to peck at every step, it looked like a large pigeon. He seized his bow and fitted an arrow to it, drew it to its full extent, and then let go. His shaft sped through the air like a shooting star. With no hesitation, for he never missed his quarry, he spurred after the arrow to retrieve the game. But as he approached it, an old woman hurried towards the horse. She had picked up the large pigeon transfixed by his arrow, and was shouting, "Who are you? Why have you shot my best black laying hen? Have you nothing better to do?" Yi's heart missed a beat. He pulled up short. "What? A hen?" he echoed nervously. "I thought it was a wood pigeon." "Are you blind? You must be over 40, too." "Yes, madam. 45 last year." "No fool like an old fool, they say. Imagine mistaking a hen for a wood pigeon. Who are you, anyway?" "I am Yi." While saying this, he saw that his arrow had pierced the hen's heart, killing it outright. So his voice trailed away on his name as he dismounted. "I am Yi." "Never heard of him." She peered into his face. "There are those who know my name. In the days of good King Yao, I shot wild boars and serpents." "Oh, you liar! Those were shot by Lord Feng Meng and some others. Maybe you helped. But how can you boast of doing it all yourself? For shame!" "Why, ma'am, that fellow Feng Meng has just taken to calling on me during the last few years. We never worked together. He had no part in it." "Liar! Everybody says so. I hear it 4 or 5 times a month." "All right, let's come down to business. What about this hen?" "You must make it up. She is my best. She laid me an egg every day. You'll have to give me 2 hoes and 3 spindles in exchange." "Look at me, madam. I neither farm nor spin. Where could I get hoes or spindles? I've no money on me either, only 5 baked cakes, but they're made of white flour. I'll give you these for your hen, with 5 stalks of leek and a package of paprika into the bargain. What do you say?" Taking the cakes from his bag with one hand, he picked up the hen with the other. The old woman was not averse to taking cakes of white flour, but insisted on having 15. After haggling for some time, they agreed on 10, and Yi promised to bring the next over by noon the next day at the latest, leaving the arrow there as security. Then, his mind at rest, he stuffed the dead bird in his bag, sprang into his saddle, and headed home. Though famished, he was happy. It was over a year since they had tasted chicken soup. It was afternoon when he emerged from the forest, and he plied his whip hard in his eagerness to get home. His horse was exhausted, though, and they did not reach the familiar kaoliang fields until dusk. He glimpsed a shadowy figure some way off, and almost at once an arrow sang through the air towards him. Without reining in his horse, which was trotting along, Yi fitted an arrow to his bow and let fly. Zing! 2 arrowheads collided, sparks flew into the air, and the 2 shafts thrust up to form an inverted V before toppling over and falling to the ground. No sooner had the first 2 met than both men loosened their second, which again collided in mid-air. They did this 9 times, till Yi's supply was exhausted, and now he could see Feng Meng opposite, gloating as he aimed another arrow at his throat. Well, well, thought Yi, I imagined he was fishing at the seaside, but he's been hanging about to play dirty tricks like this. Now I understand the old woman talking as she did. In a flash his enemy's bow arched like a full moon, and the arrow whistled through the air towards Yi's throat. Perhaps the aim was at fault, for it struck him full in the mouth. He tumbled over, transfixed, and fell to the ground. His horse stood motionless. Seeing Yi was dead, Feng Meng tiptoed slowly over. Smiling as if to drink to his victory, he gazed at the face of the corpse. As he stared long and hard, Yi opened his eyes and sat up. You've learned nothing in 100 visits or more to me. He spat out the arrow and laughed. Don't you know my skill in biting the arrow? That's too bad. These tricks of yours won't get you anywhere. You can't kill your boxing master with blows learned from him. You must work out something of your own. I was trying to pay you out in your own coin, mumbled the victor. Yi stood up, laughing heartily. You're always quoting some adage. Maybe you can impress old women that way, but you can't impose on me. I've always stuck to hunting, never taken to highway robbery like you. Relieved to see that the hen in his bag was not crushed, he remounted and rode away. Curse you! An oath carried after him. To think he should stoop so low. Such a young fellow, and yet he's picked up swearing. No wonder that old woman was taken in. Yi shook his head sadly as he rode along. 3. Before he came to the end of the Kaoliang fields, night had fallen. Stars appeared in the dark blue sky, and in the west the evening star shone with unusual brilliance. The horse picked its way along the white ridges between the fields, so weary that its pace was slower than ever. Fortunately, at the horizon the moon began to shed its silver light. Confound it! Yi, whose belly was rumbling now, lost patience. The harder I try to make a living, the more tiresome things happen to waste my time. He spurred his horse, but it simply twitched its rump and jogged on as slowly as before. It's so late. Chang-go is surely to be angry, he thought. She may fly into a temper. Thank goodness I've got this little hen to make her happy. I'll tell her, Madam, I went 200 li there and back to find this. No, that's no good. Sounds too boastful. Now to his joy he saw lights ahead and stopped worrying. And without any urging, the horse broke into a canter. A round snow-white moon lit up the path before him, and a cool wind soothed his cheeks. This was better than coming home from a great hunt. The horse stopped of its own accord beside the rubbish heap. Yi saw at a glance that something was amiss. The whole house was in confusion. Chao Fu alone came out to meet him. What's happened? Where's Wang Sheng? He demanded. He's gone to the Yao family to look for our mistress. What? Has your mistress gone to the Yao family? Yi was too taken aback to dismount. Yes, sir. Chao took the reins and whip. Then Yi got down from his horse and crossed the threshold. After a moment's thought, he turned to ask, Are you sure she didn't grow tired of waiting and go to a restaurant? No, sir. I've asked in all 3 restaurants. She isn't there. His head lowered in thought, Yi entered the room. The 3 maids were standing nervously in front of the hall. He cried out in amazement, What? All of you here? Your mistress never goes alone to the Yao family. They looked at him in silence, then took off his bow, the quiver, and the bag, holding the small hen. Yi had a moment of panic. Suppose in anger Chang-go had killed herself. He sent Nu Keng for Chao Fu, and told him to search the pond in the back and the trees. Once in their room, though, he knew his guess had been wrong. The place was in utter disorder. All the chests were opened, and one glance behind the bed showed that the jewel case was missing. He felt as if doused with cold water. Gold and pearls meant nothing to him, but the elixir given to him by the priest had been in that case too. After walking twice around the room, he noticed Wang Sheng at the door. "Please, sir, our mistress isn't with the Yaos. They're not playing mahjong tonight." Yi looked at him and said nothing. Wang Sheng withdrew. "Did you call me, sir?" asked Chao Fu, coming in. Yi shook his head and waved him away. He walked round and round the room, and then went to the hall and sat down. Looking up, he could see on the opposite wall the vermilion bow and arrows, the black bow and arrows, the crossbow, the sword and dagger. After some reflection, he asked the maids who were standing there woodenly, "What time did your mistress disappear?" "She wasn't here when I brought in the lamp," said Nu Yi, "but no one saw her go out." "Did you see her take the medication in the case?" "No, sir, but she did ask for some water this afternoon." Yi stood up in consternation. He suspected he had been left alone on earth. "Did you see anything flying to heaven?" "Oh!" Nu Sin was struck by a thought. "When I came out after lighting the lamp, I did see a black shadow flying this way. I never dreamed it was our mistress." Her face turned pale. "It must have been." Yi clapped his knee and sprang up. He stared out, turning back to ask Nu Sin, "Which way did the shadow go?" Nu Sin pointed with one finger, but all he could see in that direction was the round, snow-white moon, with its hazy pavilions and trees, suspended in the sky. When he was a child, his grandmother had told him of the lovely landscape of the moon. He still had a vague recollection of her description. As he watched the moon floating in a sapphire sea, his own limbs seemed very heavy. Fury took possession of him, and in his fury he felt the urge to kill. With eyes starting from his head, he roared at the maidens, "Bring my bowl, the one with which I shot the suns, and 3 arrows." Nu Yi and Nu King took down the huge bow in the middle of the hall and dusted it. Together with 3 long arrows, they handed it to him. Holding the bow in one hand, with the other he fitted the 3 arrows to the string. He drew the bow to the full, aiming straight at the moon. Standing there, firm as a rock, his eyes darting lightning, his beard and hair flying in the wind like black tongues of flame, for one instant he looked again at the hero who long ago had shot the suns. There was a whistle, one only. The 3 shafts left the string, one after the other, too fast for eye to see or ear to hear. They should have struck the moon in the same place, for they followed each other without a hair's breadth between them. But to be sure of reaching his mark, he had given each a slightly different direction, so that the arrows struck 3 different points, inflicting 3 wounds. The maids gave a cry. They saw the moon quiver, and thought it must surely fall. But still it hung there peacefully, shedding a calm, even brighter light, as if completely unscathed. Yi drew back his head to hurl an oath at the sky. He watched and waited, but the moon paid no attention. He took 3 paces forward, and the moon fell back 3 paces. He took 3 paces back, and the moon moved forward. They looked at each other in silence. Listlessly he leaned his bow against the door of the ball. He went inside. The maids followed him. He sat down and sighed. "Well, your mistress will be happy on her own forever after. How could she have the heart to leave me and fly up there alone? Did she find me too old? But only last night she said, 'You are not old. It's a sign of mental weakness to think of yourself as old.' That couldn't be," said Nu Yi. "Folks still describe you as a warrior, sir." "And sometimes you seem like an artist," put in Nu Sin. "Nonsense. The fact is, those noodles with crow sauce were unedible. I can't blame her for not being able to stomach them. That leopard skin is worn out on one side. I'll cut a piece of the leg facing the wall to mend it. That will look better." Nu Sin walked inside. "Wait a bit," said Yi, and reflected. "There's no hurry for that. I'm famished. Make haste and cook me a dish of chicken with paprika, and make 5 caddies of flapjacks. After that I can go to bed. Tomorrow I'm going to ask that priest for another elixir, so that I can follow her. Tell Wangsheng Nu King to give my horse 4 measures of beans." End of The Flight to the Moon by Lu Xun.